Great. All right. Y'all should be ready to go.
Okay. So I think the big picture goal today was to start or keep the conversation moving forward in terms of how the communications folks and the technology people start to overlap. What do we want to present to people? What do we want to get back? There's a little demo thing on the desk that also shows some photos on the screen. We're not tied to any of these pieces, right? I find it really, really helpful to provide some tangible things for people to respond to, as opposed to what might you want to see on a screen. I don't know, lots of things coming up and down my computer. Okay. I think the other thing for us to keep in mind is there's probably parallel paths in terms of what type of information we want to collect and what we want to share with folks. Not all of it necessarily needs to be into this platform, but if it's things that we can do easily, happy to do so. And Carson, please feel free to jump in, because at whatever point, because a lot of what we'll be talking about is actually how we're going to integrate in all the things that he's been doing over the last year, and he's much more of an expert about it than I am. As a reminder for some people who may not have seen this before, the way that the core technology pieces are going to work is we're going to have a series of hubs doing different things. And so what I mean by hub is a physical box-ish thing. One box, at least, that's measuring things outside. That's how we're doing the anticipatory control. There are opportunities for us to collect data there, but probably most of the team doesn't care about that box except for how it integrates into the system. A box that at some point integrates with what Paul is doing, where we make an intervention, we take control of things. And then a decision was made pretty early on that for a number of reasons, we needed to provide users an ability to override what we're doing. So I think the user interface pieces that we're talking about started from that being the core need, that from an ethical standpoint and any number of terms you want to use for it, if we're going to take over their home's HVAC system, they have to tell us that, or be able to have an option of saying we no longer want that occurring. At a meeting maybe 6 months ago, 9 months ago at this point, we did some brainstorming about what did we think we wanted that to be. Did we want simply a switch or blinking LEDs or a screen? At that point, a decision was made to move down the pathway of a more graphical user interface. I think all that's still up on or up for debate if people decide that they don't want to do that. Any questions with those pieces so far? And I'll share my screen here in a minute to show a few things, but okay, great. There's a little demo thing here on the desk, but we'll start first with some thought process pieces that Carson and I have been doing. Now, how do I share a screen? Share. Host has disabled participant screen sharing. Any chance you can?
Ellison, it might defer to you again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, does that need to be me? Give me just a second. I'm gonna make you a co-host, Christian.
That is a power that I am not.
I know, I love wielding the power of Zoom. Sorry, just trying to lighten up Friday afternoon.
See if we can get some of these things out of the way. This is a Miro board. It's like a big whiteboard. I'm happy to share this with people if you want to look at it later. There's nothing secret there. Tons of the details about how we're working. But when Carson and I were going through and brainstorming what it meant for this interface to do things separate from the technological activities it needs to do, there were three kind of big bins that we came up with. What do we want to know about the environment? Now we need that from a scientific standpoint and making things run. What do we want to know about what the user is doing? And I can zoom into these things because they're pretty small, it looks like. And what do we want to share with the user? There's likely lots of overlap between those three things, but this is the brainstorming process that we started with. And the boxes in green are things that we can do now, right? That's, if you said you wanted to deploy this tomorrow, assuming that Carson would quit on me this afternoon, we'd be able to do all of these things probably tomorrow. So already built into our system is particulate matter measurements indoors and outdoors, relative humidity, temperature, and absolute pressure. Not there necessarily that we care about all of those, but we care about some of them, and they're packaged into the same sensors, so we might as well do all of them. Particulate matter probably being the most important, and all of the environmental things, because it's a $6 additional investment for us. And I have some ideas about some things that it might be able to tell us in the future. So because Carson and I are leading the development of that stage, we're tacking it on. That's what we can do right now. As it stands, those would be the only environmental things that the technology or hubs would be measuring, recording. I do know that there have been other things that have been talked about that people might want, but now is the time, in the immediate future, is the time to feed that information back into us if we're going to integrate it into the boxes and the hardware piece. Any questions about those ones? I think those ones are pretty boring and probably talked about them in nauseam in the past. Okay. Things that we might want to know about the user. What screen are they looking at? And that will make a little bit more sense when we talk about the demo here in a bit. How often do they override the intervention? And how often is the screen on? That first and third one, in some ways, are coupled a little bit together, but as somebody who doesn't like to have tons of technology running at my house, I would want this thing shutting off, at least the screen shutting off if it was my home. So we've figured out a way that I think we'll be able to do that. Have it turn black and have it turn back on. Where I think that's actually a nice additional piece is I think it will give us a better measurement if people are actually looking at the system as opposed to just toggling back and forth between screens. Questions on that one? And in like 5 minutes here, we're just going to move to like, what do people want? What do we need to do moving forward? And I'll preface this with, I have tasked Carson with, between now and the end of the semester, providing a bill of materials and a roadmap so that we can start building up some of these to test in parallel starting in January, because we just need to have a lot of these things running to see what's going to break. And, 4 months ago was the time to be doing that. So we'll hit that hard next semester.
Really quick,
Yeah.
how often they override it? So would they turn off the system and hit back on through this interface?
Yeah. So we have a button built in right now on the screen that would be showing an ability to, the intervention is on, click the button. Are you sure you really want to turn this off? Yes, I do. And that's what we'd be capturing.
And then if, sorry to get into the
No,
weeds, if they turn it off, does it stay off until they turn it back on? Would it ever, like, it's been off for 24 hours, would it be like, hey, you want to turn me back on?
From the intervention side of things.
Yeah.
Yes, the way I have it set up right now, and they're completely made up times,
Okay.
is sleep for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 24 hours, or some such.
Okay, got it. So it's not just off until I turn it back on, it's the intervention. It's just sleep for.
And I would say all of those are possible,
Got
and
it.
it'd be helpful to know from you all and from the rest of the team about what you want. We know we can do both. We can trigger it that it is off until somebody does something. We can have it auto turn on after some reset time. And I'm guessing we actually need both of those abilities, like provide them that ability. And then this is, what do we want to share with the user? When Carson and I started brainstorming this, we thought in some ways it was the simplest one. And I think it actually got to be the much more complex question in some ways. So the green is what I feel pretty confident that we want to do. Blue, and we'll keep filling out these boxes in this discussion moving forward. Things we've thought about, but I don't know if they're actually good ideas from a programmatic standpoint. I think we have to be able to provide information about what the project is, who to contact, the cell phone number, all of those things to, get out of the project or ask questions. I originally thought that we would be providing information about air pollution levels. I still think that is interesting, but I think there is a question about would that knowledge change their behaviors and do we actually want to measure that? Or know that or not, right? The thing is for the communication folks to tell us, but
That's what I'm.
we can do that. Yep, we have that built in. The dashboard becomes a lot less interesting if we take some of these things out. So, what is the status of the information of the intervention? Again, I think we want to and need to provide that information, but I think it is up for, be good for us to validate.
By status, what do you mean, like is it on or off? You
Correct,
mean-
yeah.
okay. So working, like humming. not
Yeah.
humming, that's-
Yeah, I hear humming. Can I go look at the box and also see, oh, yeah, it's supposed to be tied together. And estimated time to replace filter, in some ways that might be more. Some of the things you've been thinking about, Paul, in terms of. As a user, I think I would care about that, but is it an information overload for us to be doing to people?
So I know I'm not on the communications team, but I've got questions about a couple of these.
Yeah.
That's right. So on the one estimated time to replace the filter. I could see having something where you kind of toggle through, like, in cars nowadays, you toggle through the information, a lot of them will say 103 miles to empty. And so it could be something like that. The problem, of course, is it's going to vary depending on the concentration outdoors. 50 micrograms per cubic
Mhm.
meter, 300 micrograms per cubic meter, so that would still be, there'd be a big uncertainty on that. There'd be,
Yeah.
like, based on a certain concentration, it would be estimated to be about
Yeah,
some amount of time.
we do have the upside that we are actively measuring outside concentration, but yeah, you're 100%.
But we're.
It's a best guess.
We're measuring, but we're estimating the time.
Yeah.
We're estimating the concentration will be of events in the future.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And which we don't really know. But I could see having something where they could scroll to it. I'm less certain about having something that's just always popping up. I don't know if you would agree with that. On the air pollution levels. Would we be, are you thinking that we would show both indoor and outdoor?
Yeah, I would think so, but I think that's all up for debate, of course. That's why we're doing this, right? It's very easy from a technological standpoint to get into this little box of here's all the things we can do, which does not mean that any of them are good things for us actually doing. So what I'm hoping to come out of this discussion today, or say like by early next week, is these are the things we need to have. These are the things that we need to do some playing with. And here are things that you might want, but we have no idea if we can do yet or not. And we need to know those like now, right? There's gonna be a lot of testing there. So everything's on fair tape or fair game and on the table. I guess it's a short way to answer your very simple question.
So the reason I was asking, I would really like to get your thoughts on this is, my sense when working with folks in communities is they're just kind of done with people telling them that everything sucks. They really want to know, what do we do about it? They don't want to know about problems, they want to know about solutions. That's when conception change their lives. So just telling them, hey, outdoors is really bad, the thing is running. I think it doesn't really empower them, doesn't really support them, is my sense. But if it was combined with, and because we're running this thing, well, indoors is really good. Then maybe that helps to reinforce to them the importance of doing it. So I'm curious.
It does. It absolutely does. Because you're showing the efficacy of what you've created. And because we usually look at two things that they care about or that we know help the behavior change are. Will the thing you're asking me to use or the thing you're asking me to change work? And can I use it? Can I adopt that behavior? And so I think it'd be fantastic. If outsource is like, oh, and it doesn't have to be like purple, but it's like, it's now moderate outside. But inside, you're good, because it's also showing you've adopted something that will help you.
Mhm.
And so this is a really nice response efficacy, self-efficacy approach to see. And then what I like to know, and we would be able to, is like, well, then how often do they come back and look at, are they finding value in it over time? And I well, I don't want to stop wildfires, but I kind of do want to stop wildfires because then we could see the variability. So my answer would be, yeah, totally.
Okay,
want
so-
to see
so-
that difference.
So I'm not off base here.
No,
If,
not at all.
if we focus on the giving of information that is more about how this is a solution as
Right.
opposed to there's a problem.
Yeah, if we just say, hey, this is what it looks like, good luck, or you can do X and Y, that doesn't help them as much. But except if it would help them, they go, well, yeah, there really is a problem. We want to show them that indoors is not great air, but we can clean it. So I think,
Well, and that,
yeah.
if they then overrode it. And then another event happens and that's all bad,
yeah,
well, maybe I should turn this to that.
right, and that's why knowing what's outside stations, we have someone who does turn it off. And then I'm curious to see, well, are they noticing when the air is bad outside? If it's, and oftentimes you can't tell, but are they noticing or they're seeing something and they're then deciding, oh, I'm gonna turn it on. That also is interesting, though I know that we don't want it to be off for a really long period of time overall, but
Yeah.
that would be another interesting behavior to capture if this was more larger scale.
Right. That's one of the things I've really struggled with trying to balance in my head is I think there's actually a lot of questions we could dive into from a user perspective side of things if we had 300
Yeah,
households instead of 30 households. And that's where we started like pulling some of these like blue boxes back in terms of is that actually more noise as opposed to a benefit? But all is in fair game. The other thing, and I should to go back to the end of the semester timeline and putting the boxes together, is we want to put these on people's desks. Not that they would be fully integrated with your furnace at this point. Will we be able to do the indoor monitoring makeup data for the outdoor monitoring and just have people look at them for weeks? They can fail on your desk just as easily as they can fail on the bench top. Okay, let's quickly pivot. Yeah.
Eric, so I kind of spoke for us. Is that your feeling? I don't want to squelch this.
Yeah, for sure. I think indoor, outdoor, side by side, it shows that it's working, or it shows that there's no difference, and then does that correlate with they're like, turning this off?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think something simple like that would be perfect.
Great. Yeah, so let me show you some mock-up things we've done, which what I'm going to show on the screen is just cell phone photos I took like 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago now, because I couldn't get this to sync up. So you can all look at what's actually happening here, push the buttons, move around. I'll show some of these same things on the computer screen. We're not tied to any of these things. And to echo something I said in our first design meeting, this is not the time to protect anybody's feelings in terms of what you like, don't like, any of those things. Brutal, honest feedback is by far the most important thing so that we can move quickly forward to getting a solution that people want, as opposed to Christian thought that was a good idea on Monday morning. Okay. And now we can move around. So the first main screen that we've mocked up right now, which is what is actually shown there right now. And for people in the room, it's completely made up data that's bouncing every 5 seconds just to show changes, is an outdoor and indoor PM levels. It's a really unfortunate photo I took because they're at the same like level there, but outdoor temperature, outdoor humidity, indoor temperature, indoor humidity on a gauge sort of setup. What I have mocked up right now, which is much more, I think, impressive in the real thing as opposed to the screen, is the color of the bar changes to match with the AQI EPA values. Not that I think people are overly knowledgeable about what those AQI levels are. I saw your hand, Allison, just 1 second here and open it up for you. And then the numbers that are in the middle, mostly because I spent way too much time figuring out how to do it, is the delta change from the last time the measurement was made. So you can see trends. Again, I think that's maybe an overly engineering, nerdy metric to have in there. But on the one that you see on the screen right now, that would be indicating that our outdoor concentration went up by 189 micrograms per cubic meter since the last measurement, and indoors went up by 87. Yeah, Allison, you wanna jump in?
Sure, I thought I'd just jump in on, one, I love the dial. Partially saying that because feedback I've gotten for another thing we're doing, we're reporting back, that's what's been the favored view, so I'm a bit biased there. And I like the up or down arrow. I am wondering about the number because it requires you to remember that that means it's the difference from the last measurement. So unless you can indicate that that's what it is, which I think is too much text, maybe just up or down. The other thing I was wondering is, since you're going to put indoor and outdoor side by side, did you already play around with like showing a difference, or maybe putting them as like a double rainbow? Some way so that you don't have to do the math of
Sure.
that is a thought. And I certainly welcome, like, especially the communication folks, if I'm sort of leading us down a path that's not helpful, please say so. But that's kind of what came to my mind immediately, because I really like how quickly I focus in on those two numbers. But I'm wondering if we can do this, the deliberative step for people of subtracting them, or even just showing them like relative to one another.
Yeah, so I had a similar thought with the double arc type setup, which I think is possible to do. Something that certainly doesn't come across in the static image and might be a bad idea in general, but is showing up in the live image, is that arc is actually on a log scale, because most of the time in people's homes it should be, 7 to 30. Most of our outdoor concentrations are going to be in that ballpark. But if we still want to convey adverse events outside that might be in the hundreds, it was really boring to see the no gauge showing up at all 99% of the time. Now, it also might give a false sense of scale, because people don't think in log scale. But that's why I took off the double arc, was because I then put it on a log scale and it looked really bizarre. But I think it's all the things you brought up, I think, are great ideas, and that's why we're having this conversation. So thanks.
A few things that I think of is like, do we really need to tell them the outdoor temperature, the humidity, like, I don't know if they're really doing anything with that information, like simplify it. And then like, if we had that space freed up, like outdoor really large, indoor really large. Because when I look at these, it's not super obvious to me which one's outdoor, which one's indoor.
Yeah,
And
sure.
then the delta, I guess, I don't know when the last time measurement was it 3 days ago? Was it, a minute ago, right? So I feel like that increment is really arbitrary to someone.
Yeah, 100%.
So like maybe, yeah, if it could, and again, I don't want too much information, but maybe if it could somehow say like up since an hour ago or yesterday at this time, whatever is a reasonable measurement.
Yeah, that's all very possible, right?
Can you? So I would get rid of the delta period, because most likely, but something that shows it's going up or down. Can you, would they go to a different screen where they could see over time what's going on? I think it would be nice if they had data, because we're in part wanting them to engage with this and see the extent to which over time they start to trail off, but they pay more attention if there's an event, that kind of thing. And to me, it would seem like something that's relevant, and I'm kind of thinking scenes here, that we could show them, here's what your air quality look like over time. That would be, like outdoor would like this and indoor would like this, that would be an interesting screen, for them to have. And I think it would be more useful than the delta change. I mean, it's certainly the up or down, and if there's an indication, this is how long it's been at this level, or the hour it's been up or something, so they have an improved time.
Yeah. No, perfect segue. The second screen that we've mocked up so far is all that same data on a historical plot. What you're seeing here is pretty boring because it is random numbers jumping around all over the place. Now, I personally feel like it's too small, too much, overwhelming. So we can think about what gets pared down. But I was going back and doing the same sort of back and forth thought process. Do I care more about my absolute for me, or do I care about the trends? Now, as somebody who stares at air pollution data for hours on time every single day, I can get all the same information from the chart. And so maybe the gauge doesn't have as much value for me, but I feel like the gauge model might be more accessible to most folks.
Tell you what to do in that moment.
Yeah.
Or, and in a way, the gauge is giving them information about what to do if they go outside. So there's also that.
I don't know if that's handy. Tons of-
Taylor, do you want me to mute that?
Okay.
Was
Was that Allison's?
Oh, there was a lot of background noise, maybe just for the online people. We're good now. Or
Yeah,
maybe not.
that was me. I'm sorry. I'm
Oh.
here. But I'm in a coffee shop. There's an area-wide internet outage. We're calling in.
Sorry.
Charlie
Tim.
Brown.
Have power to.
I might now, yeah. That's why Ellison should not have given me the power of administrator. So the last major, one more. It was born. I have an information tab right now, whatever you want to put in there, right? I apparently didn't move that photo in. And then this is not well put together yet or at all. Yeah, let's scroll up one. So what we have right now to indicate it's running, and again, everything is fair game. I just wanted people to start to see some things, to have thoughts and respond to. We have,
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
What's the time frame that it's showing right now?
oh, this is showing like 1 minute because that was 1 minute after I turned it on. I think 24 hours is probably a useful value. Yeah, we can do whatever, but I think it's a great question because then we also probably need to do some averaging because we don't want 3,660 like points on there, but yeah, it's. Yeah.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I think we need, no, it's great. That's what it's for, right? This is what this process is for, is I want to get your feedback and I want you to think about things and I want us to be converging towards something that Carson and I can act on, which feedback is the way to do it.
So
If we can light raising hands.
did you said you mentioned something about, you're not sure if it's like too small or too big, like the graph?
Yeah.
Have you looked at, are we able to have one screen per like parameter?
Yeah, so take one, short answer is yes. Take a step back. I coded everything here. You want 90 screens, we can give you 90
Okay.
screens.
I don't know if we're worried about maybe having too many things for someone to scroll through, but
Yeah,
because I'm thinking just fresh in my mind, because I'm showing people how to interact with the dashboard for pieces of equipment that I've been installing
Mhm.
at sites, and they're showing pretty much the same thing, but they basically just have temperature is one graph, CO2 is one graph, PM is one graph.
yeah,
So
100%.
we can obviously show more.
Yeah. We could have multiple screens, we could have the screen rotate every 30 seconds to a different parameter, all this fair game. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
The way, right now, we're indicating that the system is on, which really does not convey well in the photo, is this little red dot showing up or going away based on if the intervention is on or off. Now, there'd be some knowledge transfer we'd have to do to the homeowners in terms of what does this thing mean? When it is on, it's when when it's lit up, it would be an indication that our intervention is on. I think it's also fair that we may want to have something that is your intervention might be going on soon, but maybe that's more knowledge that's needed. When that is available, which turns out I had terrible timing because it disappeared from the random timing on and off, you are able to push that spot and that's where it would pop up the screen with whatever information, and I want it to snooze for 3 minutes, 30 minutes, or 7 days, or what have you. Now, I did it this way deliberately from the standpoint that I think it's one extreme. In this, I think it's just some placeholder text right now of, we're trying to protect you. Do you really want to turn this thing off? As it's set up right now, they would not be able to manually turn this on. It'd be a one-way control, turn off. Now we could think about maybe you can't turn it on during fine events, but you can turn it off and then back on during adverse, right? We can get more complicated here, but we have it set up right now that the only time that they would see the snooze type of features is when something is going wrong, and that they would have to make a conscious choice to turn it on or off. If we had 300 households instead of 30 households in 3 years, this is the sort of place that I would love to be able to put in what are your priorities and have things turn on and off at different timescales, but that's a whole different RO1 type thing as opposed to what we can do within the constraints we have right now.
I mean, I feel like if someone leaves their house, right, they're like, I don't always, you know, the money on this going on when I'm not home, like they might want to turn it off, and so you're saying they wouldn't be able to unless they were at home when it was on.
As it's configured right now, yeah, or as the mock-up is done right now.
Yeah.
Now, sorry.
No, I was just saying, it seems like there should be a way for them to turn it off. If they really want to.
Vacation.
Yeah, something like that, or like, you know, if they leave for work for 8 hours, they don't care about their animals having clean air inside.
It'd be really easy to do the hours piece or the vacation piece, just another screen, that's not a problem. We'd have to think about how we then reset that in terms of do we want it to. Yeah, how fixed that is. Now this reopens a door that we talked about 6 months ago, 9 months ago, where everything that we are doing here, if we were able to guarantee that this was connected to the internet, we can present all of this information on individual house by house basis under secure login, where they'd be able to look at this and control this remotely. A decision or leaning or whatever was made that we weren't ready to restrict our households to places that had internet access. So we have not done any of that other development to open that up. It's not a major lift, but I think it's one that we would only want to open that door up if we feel pretty confident we are then going to say we're willing to restrict our households to places with internet. I personally think there's a lot of advantages to that from the standpoint of being able to get the data all the time and being able to push information back to the households. But I do understand that some people felt very strongly that that was too narrow of a population and maybe not the population we're trying to hit. So again, we don't have to make that decision now, but if we're going to invest that time to build that in, I think we need to be pretty well certain that we're willing to make that choice that internet is a requirement for the home. As it is right now, everything would log locally, and then we're able to pull that data off the device. But that would be days, weeks, months, whatever time frame that we're going back to these households to be able to access that data. I think we're going to be able to do that without having to physically go into their home. We can do it from outside their home, which is pretty creepy that I think we're going to be able to do that, but I think we will be able to do that. But we'll have to be within a close enough distance that the neighbors would know we're like hanging outside their home. Okay, those are the screens. Yeah, same idea. Yeah, very similar. That's what we have, right? Again, we're not tied to any of these things, but we need to start more seriously moving towards production ready design and testing. So I just really urge people to both share your thoughts now, but ruminate it on it over the next couple of days, and maybe next week or whatever, people can very briefly send us some more thoughts, and then Carson and I will start moving forward. Again, we can always do revisions, but we just need to accept the fact that that's going to have timeline implications if we
So it sounds like you can give us the indoor and the outdoor conditions. I mean, I think in a way people might enjoy being able to live there and see the air. I mean, see how it's cold outside as we're in here. That piece of it, although their firms might show them that too. In a way, anything that pushes them to come to this is nice. I've almost thought about what if the first screen didn't show the air quality, but it was a second screen. So then it's like they have to touch it to go to the next one. But I don't know if we want to do that because we really want to be sure that they're seeing that piece. So it kind of makes sense if you're going to do it to kind of to flip that. Or if there's a way that on the same screen that they see what the indoor and outdoor is, that the information about the temperature is smaller on that. I mean, I agree with you that, Erica, about like, this is indoor, this is outdoor, but that's really obvious. But I was just curious about if that, and I don't really care about my humidity, but temperature, I care about that. Partly it's telling me if my furnace is working,
Right.
you know, in the scheme of things, and if I'm concerned about whether this thing is gonna mess with the other systems in my house,
Mhm.
that would give me some indication that, yeah, it's not messing with those other systems. So, it might be, it may be useful to still have something about temperature on the screen. I'm neutral and I'm trying to figure it out.
I'm gonna advocate for not having temperature or humidity at all. I feel like temperature you get on your thermostat. And I think a lot of people, what they care about is, am I comfortable?
Right.
And they don't need numbers. And this intervention is not about temperature or humidity. I have concern about humidity because if I see 35 and 46 and I don't know how to use those numbers, I might think, oh my God, there's too much water in here. There's not. How you even use humidity metrics, it's complicated for people who do this as there's a scientific career how to use humidity metrics, never mind a resident. And this is an intervention that's not about humidity in the first place. So I would rather not give them anything about humidity because I feel like it could actually make them concerned about things that there's no concern about.
Mhm.
And it could drive them to try to take actions that are totally unnecessary or even counterproductive. Just because of the vagaries of humidity metrics and what they mean. Temperature, I feel like there's other places to get that.
But I want to get them to go to the screen.
Mhm.
So that would push them maybe more to look at the screen. So that's kind of like a little carrot potentially.
So I guess, I don't see a harm in having the temperature.
Yeah, I think
there could be some harm in having humidity.
I have no problem with getting rid of humidity. I think that makes sense.
I don't think there's harm in having temperature other than it takes up space
Yeah.
on
I
the
think
screen.
that's
And so that's where it'd be great, even if it's only sample 30, to get people's feedback. Did you like this? Did you not?
Yeah. Which brings me to one thing, and I can't remember it. Do we even have the opportunity to talk with them a little bit after the fact about their experience with the equipment?
I think there's like an exit survey,
Uh-huh.
but I honestly don't remember.
So we're doing surveys every couple of weeks during the intervention.
We are.
I haven't asked anything about it yet.
Oh, cool. Then.
So,
I'm sorry.
so the idea is that you're saying like the carrot, you want something that's gonna draw their attention to the screen so they would interact with it.
In part, yeah. I mean, you don't want it to just,
So,
so temperature might be another reason they, especially if it's kind of boring.
yeah,
Cat videos.
yeah, I think,
What?
Cat videos.
I think the temperatures are good. I
Lolcat.
it does make someone think about something. Because if you think about, well, how do I feel? But then you see that temperature, like, I feel pretty good for that temperature. And then like, it sparks some kind of investigation of what's going on here. So I didn't know if sometimes you see some of these screens, even like with our computer, you have like a sleep screen that just has one kind of value. So if that was like, if your temperature was just a thing that was always displaying, and you can even have some kind of color or whatever, just something to associate with it, it's like, oh, 67, that's interesting, because I feel much warmer than that, then you come up, interact, touch the screen, then it brings you to those menus or those other screens, so you kind of scroll through and look at what's going on, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. We can have a screensaver type
Yeah,
piece, so we just have it likely as a window that automatically turns on after X number of minutes of not interacting with the screen. That's what we had. We were thinking about the same thing from a black screen, forcing them to tell us that they were looking at it.
Yeah.
But it could be something else too. And this is where I think there's too many research questions that could be possible. Like, I want to know if somebody looked at it, right? And if I am always presenting that information to them, I have no idea if they are. So I also don't want them to have a black box sitting on their countertop that they forget about. So I think it's much more likely that they're going to unplug a screen with nothing on it, because I think it's already off, as opposed to something going on.
Yeah, I think there definitely should be some sort of screensaver, but again, like, I don't want to put the air quality index on, because they don't press it, remove that information, so maybe just something that reminds them, okay, they have a system that's looking out for them and builds that like trust with it. Yeah, you know, like us all together in your house. The faces of the house, the window. And we got your back. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Something, yeah, that's maybe not quantitative, but maybe gets at that qualitative aspect. And I know that I'll bring that. Like,
Sure, yeah, please, yeah, I very much appreciate that. So some kind of like takeaway things that I'm hearing, because we are getting to the end, I want to be respectful there. I haven't heard of any additional information that we would want to present, although there is more. I fully admit that you haven't had time to think about that, but there wasn't like an aha moment. Of course, I thought you were going to be showing this. So that's good, although I do encourage you to keep thinking about those. Simpler seems better, probably pulling things out, making things bigger. Sleep mode, screensaver mode, something to force them to interact with it if they want to know, and probably more resolution or more degrees of control in terms of when intervention would be automatically running or off. Be that the vacation mode or the away from the home eco mode or any number of those things. Does anyone see an instance where we would want them to be able to pressurize their home during a non-adverse air event? For example, my thermostat, I can turn on the fan whenever, right? Do we want that? Or are people okay with this idea that hopefully the majority of the time they never see the symbol that allows them to turn on and off the system?
So a couple of things. I'm gonna answer the question directly, but before I forget, I do think that in addition to the icon having something in small letters says like protection on, that you know, that works, that's safe, that means, and using the word like protection, that's a positive word. This system could also double as their ventilation system. And so because this, you know, the whole concept of this system is essentially a not that common, but used especially in the southeast type of ventilation system. We're just talking about having higher flow rates to fully pressurize the house instead of just bringing a certain amount of cubic feet per minute of air.
Yep.
But so if by having the system, they didn't then have another whole dwelling ventilation system, they could want to, hey, we've got a bunch of people over, something like that. It's not that they're trying to specifically pressurize the house, but they're trying to get ventilation. Independent of what it's like outside.
Yeah, fair enough. There's more than one use case for pulling air into the room or into the house. That's the point.
Just thinking of that, so hypothetically, like someone's like really worried about COVID, they're having a party. They would just want to turn the system on, right? I mean, is it to that extent? Or is it like?
So no, that there's, so we go back and look at our isolation zone and sheltered zone stuff that we compared back in COVID. This type of system with like one additional damper could be great at creating an isolation zone in the case of COVID or depending on how you want it. Yeah, you could, this system as it stands, just pressurizing the whole house is not going to do it. You need to have some differential pressure between rooms within the house. But yeah, this basic concept with another damper or two could also provide with the virus protection.
Could it also, let's say someone didn't want to have a stick, they didn't, no one in the house had COVID at the time or something, and they just wanted to increase the airflow through the house because they had read where that's a good thing to do when you're in crowds. As it is, would the system do that?
This system would do that. as is and you turn it on, yes. Yeah, so that is one of the potential use cases. I temporarily want to really increase my ventilation for some reason.
You just painted your whole living.
Right.
I'm getting this just-
Right, and they told you to open your windows and you didn't, and now you're feeling a little weird.
Yeah.
And so turn the thing on.
Yeah, the ability to turn it on is another data point that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
If it's not too hard, and then, yeah, just what Paul was saying, I think like that button for when it's on, to me, that looks like a power off button.
Yeah, the red makes me think.
I had it blinking originally and that really bugged me. So I just got-
That would bug me.
But yeah, I think text is a great idea there.
And could it be green?
Yeah.
I mean, green usually means on, I mean, so I probably do green.
Or sky.
Everything.
Or you'd like to see that you're not, because of that air.
Yeah.
The other takeaway that just as a mental reminder for myself, people seem to like the up and down type arrows, but the context was unnecessary. It was better just to see an up arrow and down arrow or increasing, decreasing, as opposed to trying to put that into some sort of
Yeah.
quantification.
I agree.
Confident to then look at over time, which would be interesting to see.
I think more than just up or down, though, because then I might think like up or down relative to what, so maybe it just says like it says yesterday or since 12 hours ago.
Yes.
Something else.
Can you say that again? Sorry, I think I just. What are you recommending for the up or down?
Yeah, just so just instead of like an arrow that goes up or down, like to me, I'm not really sure if that's like this one's higher than the one next to it, like. I could see there being ambiguity, so maybe it's like up since yesterday or up since 12 hours. Or 1 hour ago, whatever we think is a reasonable time.
I wonder if we get there just with changing the tense in some ways, increasing or decreasing, that type of.
Yeah.
But you're right, maybe being able to put it into some sort of perspective in terms of an hour ago or 24 hours ago. All of those are easy changes, right? So we can think about that, and that's an easy one as you have some of these sitting on your desk. Say it. Can we try it a different way?
The time period for that would vary depending on what happened. Wildfires probably not an hour. But living near major roadways probably is now.
I might be able to get it.
Oh,
Go ahead, sorry.
no, I'm thinking about like, there are no health related contextual values for anything less than 24 hours.
Right.
So I think, I don't know what the answer is for what the right time frame is for up or down, but it's harder for me to see the rationale for anything less than 24 hours since we don't have a way of putting those less than 24-hour averages in context with a health guideline.
Well, it would show them though that the system is working.
Mhm.
In part, so I don't know if that. I mean, that's another thing it would do. That might be of use. I mean, and if we had 300 homes, we could look to see. But I see what you mean, else. I mean, that, just saying a day or something, I think it makes sense to have some kind of a time period on there. The other thing I was thinking of, I mean, and Elsa, I don't know if you've had this, but there's been some discussion about when you give them a number, 269, as opposed to saying it's impact zone. The HUI has both on it, which is good and bad, because it's, somewhere we do need to let them know what the number means.
Yeah,
Oh, there's, oh,
Maybe that's one of the information things.
can you?
Oh, didn't you say you were gonna color code it though? I thought you dealt with that by color coding it,
yeah, the bars change color, but we probably need some sort of context. for
like
them about-
legend for that, right? If we do that.
Or, well, the other thing I was wondering about though is like, if they touch something, could it then go to another screen?
Yeah. Yeah,
Because they'd be like, oh, they wanna know what does 269 mean, because if it was, they wanted to know, because then you could have a screen that had the HUI on it and showed them. This is where you are within that, that band.
Yeah, maybe, you know, you see sometimes there's a question mark inside a circle that is, that you. tap
Yeah.
On a web page for information, tap on that and a pop out comes up that has
Yeah.
the scale or something like that.
That'd be kind of, if you could do that.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. That's essentially how we're changing between tabs and all of those things. So yeah, we just add another active space. I could tell you what pixel they're touching on the screen if you really wanted to, right? There's a,
Or if the cats.
it's overly Big Brother, like the amount of stuff that we'll be able to like. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody's time. Please feel free to reach out to Carson and I. I'm guessing Carson has run to class already. A big effort of this lift has been on Carson being able to get these data streams into such a way that we can use them. So big thank you to him, who probably has already left, so he's not hearing any of this. But thank you, Carson. We'll keep doing a couple iterations. We'll circulate around probably just some static images of a few of the different things that people have talked about to comment on, and then we'll get some ready for folks that will be quasi function. What I mean by that is we'll have the real-time indoor stuff. We'll just probably pull historical data, so it's like bouncing around at the right time frame for the outdoor. And we'll keep iterating on things to get to a point where we want. And we'll let it simmer for now, but I think revisiting no internet access required, where we want to put that effort. Where I think we can do some things if we go down the internet access is we could have your surveys pop up on this. We could prompt people, hey, it's a bad air pollution time coming up, just to be aware your system might be turning on more, right? We can be a lot more bi-directional in our conversation if we do that. It also inherently will limit the households. So pros and cons.
It will limit
And-
what? What'd you say it will limit?
Just the households, right? If
Oh.
we're adding all those other features, we just have to accept the fact that we'll be focusing on houses that at least have some level of internet.
Oh,
Connection.
right. Yeah. yeah,
Or
okay.
we say we're gonna make the financial investment and add SIM hotspot service to this, but I think that's probably more of a financial lift than we want to do, but that is an option, I guess. That's all I had. Thanks everyone for your time. I appreciate it.
I mean, I think what we saw, before and your delivery. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Anything from Taylor or Tammy before?
Nothing from me.
I think I'm unqualified to comment. I'll go back and watch the recording. Sorry for my technological failure. This is what happens when you don't have
Sorry, we didn't get any of that, Tammy, but I appreciate this.
Well said.
I'll reach out to you and set up a time that the two of us can chat. Want to share?
Yeah, we weren't able to hear that.
Technological cave.
Yeah. Charlie Brown is for sure.
Oh, Carson is still here. Thanks, Carson. I couldn't see any of the people. All right, bye, everyone.
Thanks.